Hey guys, welcome back to Ace Recaps. Today I'm going to be explaining a 2022 Kannada action-adventure film titled, Vikrant Rona. The movie starts off as we see a family driving to a far-off village in rural India called Kamaratu. The father wants his daughter, Panna's wedding to take place in his old house. He approaches the village chief to ask for permission, but he's denied because the house has been haunted ever since the murders that took place in the house 28 years ago. Since then, the house has been shut, never to be opened again. After some convincing, the old grumpy chief finally agrees to perform a ceremony that shoos away the evil spirits. When Panna inquires about the chief with her father, we get to know that he has banished his son from the village because he stole some gold from the temple. Ever since then he hasn't seen or spoken to him and his wife resents him for it. Just then his wife gets a letter from her son who's now living in London. He says that after all these years, he's finally coming back home. Reading this, the mother runs to the chief and tells him the good news, but he doesn't seem too happy about it because he still resents the boy for what he did years ago. The real reason for this will be revealed later in the movie. We are then introduced to Sanju, the son of the chief who's all grown up now. He hitchhikes his way all throughout the country to finally land in his long-lost village, Kamaratu. When he reaches the village, he meets Pakru, who was his childhood friend. Pakru is now the village taxi driver and shows him the way to his father's house. Sanju asks him to tag along, but Pakru denies as there is a haunted house on the way, and since it was already dark, he prefers to be on the safer side. On his way there, Sanju spots the house and decides to go explore. He runs into Panna there, who freaks out and hides like a baby. She was also there exploring as she heard that the place was haunted and she wanted to see if it was real. As they get to know each other, they spot a fire by the well, and when they go to check it out they spot the body of a police officer hanging by a rope. The next morning, we see that the chief is enraged by the events of the previous night and bans Sanju from ever entering his house. But Sanju still sneaks in from the back and meets his mom as she's suffering from cancer, and it was his wish to meet her once before she passes away. Since the head of the police was murdered, we are introduced to the absolute badass of an officer, Vikrant Rona. Vikramth has a strong masculine energy that no one can beat. He kicks in all the bad guys and gives in a grand entry. Vikramth travels to Kamaratu along with his little daughter. As they drive through the forest, his jeep punctures a tire. So, he decides to walk the rest of the way carrying his daughter on his back. The next morning, Vikramth introduces himself to the sub-inspector and orders him to fetch his bags from the jeep. Panna and her brother play cricket, and just as she's about to fetch the ball, she trips and falls on Sanju. A spark is seen between them even though she's engaged. Sanju has been sleeping outside in the forest since his father wasn't letting him in. As Panna prepares for the ceremony to rid her father's house from evil spirits, Sanju looks at her from afar. He blows some dandelions hoping she looks his way, and she does, indicating that the both have now fallen for each other. Back at the station, Vikramth inquires about the death of the officer. He soon decides to pay the village chief a visit. He enters the scene in the most badass way possible, on his Harley, lighting up a cigar. They have a tense argument and Vikramth decides to visit the old haunted house. He finds the well where the inspector was found and does a jumpy flip into it after handing over the rope to Sanju. Lucky for him, Sanju holds onto the rope, cause if he didn't he'd be snake soup. This was all useful though, as he finds the inspector's wallet hidden in the vines and spots a clue. That night, Vikramth and the sub-inspector go to fix his car and he suspects that someone shot his tire from a tree. He then, for no reason whatsoever, rides his bike like a madman through the forest and suddenly stops. Thanks to his spidey sense, he manages to dodge the spears that were thrown at him. He's attacked by 3 masked goons, but manages to beat them up all while dodging weapons thrown at him. The goons manage to escape the grasp of the deadly inspector, but Vikramth tries to track them down through the forest and fails. But all is not lost, he finds more clues like a shoe and a badge. When he looks up to the trees though, he is shocked to his bones. A little girl the age of his daughter hangs dead. Once they get the little girl down, we notice that her face has been painted, meaning that this was the act of a serial killer. Vikramth approaches the principal, who tells him that the little girl was very smart. It is also revealed that 16 kids from the school have been murdered the same way over the past 2 years. Vikramth inquires about this with the other inspectors, who tell him that all the bodies were found hanging in the forest with a little note on them. It was some sort of message left there by the killer. Since the haunted house was free of evil spirits, Panna and her family move back into their ancestral home. Panna, being an adventurous little brat, decides to have a look around the house while everyone's asleep. As she slowly goes through the house, she reaches the attic where she spots a box in which she finds the head of the inspector. She freaks out, and the next day everyone moves back into the chief's house, assuming that the house is still haunted. Vikramth, being the badass that he is, moves into the haunted house along with his daughter, hoping to find more clues as to what's really going on. The little girl is afraid, so she hides under the bed. When Vikramth comes looking for her, he sings her a very long song about the moon and the jungle and hugs her to sleep. Even though he's such a masculine man, he seems to be an amazing father. The next morning at the station, Vikramth inquires about the known criminal in the village. We are then introduced to Musa. Musa is a known smuggler who gets illegal items in and out of the village through secret routes in the jungle. He has never gotten caught, and no one has had the guts to approach him until now. When Vikramth meets him, Musa acts like an innocent rat, so he gets slapped by Vikramth, and Musa warns him to be careful. In the next scene we watch as the men of the village play a game of arm wrestling. Sanju wins all the games, which impresses Panna. The winner of the game gets to break the pot and drink palm wine or toddy straight out of it. Vikramth shows up and plays against Sanju. He asks him to spare him as Panna is watching, but Sanju still loses. Vikramth then tells him that he did it so he could go help Panna break the pot. The both of them share a moment as Sanju gets to grab her waist and lift her up. All the kids of the village then dance together with the young couple. They both seem to be crazy in love, not bothered by the upcoming wedding. Like, seriously, don't cheat guys, it ain't cool. As Panna and her brother walk through the forest, they spot a creepy man dancing around the fire. The both of them freak out and run away. The next day Panna and Sanju go to Vikramth's house to tell him about what they had seen in the forest. They find that the door was left open, so they enter a house. They spot a door with a bloody handprint, so they decide to investigate. When they go upstairs, they enter a red room with pictures and notes all over the walls. They then hear a loud noise and go to check it out. When they go to a nearby window, they see Vikramth, who's also dressed like the man in the jungle. His face is also painted like the victims, and he's seen dancing around the house. Panna and Sanju start doubting Vikramth himself to be the killer. So the both of them approach the village elder to find out more about what really happened 28 years ago. The old man tells them that in the outskirts of the village lived a family. A man named Natoni lived there with his mother, wife and 2 kids, Raghav and Madhav. He was also the guardian of the village temple. Since they were from the lower caste, all the kids at the school used to bully the 2 boys all the time. One day, little Sanju steals the gold from the temple. Everybody thought that Natoni stole the gold, and the people of the village were so enraged by this that they burned down his house. Raghav and Madhav escape from there with their baby sister, but just then they are attacked by the bullies. When Madhav tries to hide his baby sister, he accidentally drops her and she dies. After this, Natoni, his wife and Madhav commit suicide due to the embarrassment. The grandmother still mindlessly roams the village to this day, and Raghav was never found. Once the chief figured out that his son Sanju was behind all this, he was banished from the village. Panna and Sanju think that Vikramth is actually Madhav, who returned back to the village to avenge his family's death. When the 2 lovebirds go back to Sanju's camp, they see that someone has ravaged through his things. Vikramth suddenly comes out with his big black whip and tosses around Sanjay like a toothpick. Yes, the badass cop is Indiana Jones now. He exposes Sanjay for being a fraud as he found his real ashes in the luggage. When confronted about it, he tells them that Sanjay was his roommate in London. When he found out that his mother was suffering from cancer, he wished to see her one last time, so he sent her the mail. Just as he was about to leave for India, he met with an accident and passed away. Wanting to fulfill Sanjay's last wish, he pretends to be him and comes to visit his family. The chief overhears this and breaks down crying at this amazing gesture, so he tells him that he in fact is his son Sanju. He then surprises his wife by inviting Sanju into their home. The next day, when Sanju goes to visit Panna, he is introduced to Panna's fiancée. After the initial shock, they have a conversation and Sanju goes into the kitchen to make some tea, where he is approached by Panna and they both cry like babies proclaiming their love for each other. Panna then promises him that she'll convince her parents and get married to him. That night, Vikramth tails Musa and ends up bashing up all his men with his superhuman fighting skills. Once they were all taken care of, Vikramth captures Musa, paints his face and kills him in the forest for murdering the police officer. The next morning, he even acts surprised looking at the body as though he had nothing to do with it whatsoever. The following morning, Panna visits Vikramth at the police station and questions him about his weird dance moves, to which he replies that he just did that to get into the mind of the serial killer. Panna believes him and decides to tell him about what she figured out. She tells him about the Natoni case 28 years ago and how she suspects Raghav to be behind the murders of the kids. Vikramth takes out all the files he could find out about the incidents that took place 28 years ago and figures out that all the parents of the kids that were murdered belonged to the same class. That is the bullies that tormented young Raghav and Madhav. This proves that Raghav is behind all the murders as he's avenging his family's death. Listening to all this, Panna and her brother get scared as their dad was in the same class as Raghav, meaning that they are next. Just then, they hear a terrifying howl and get kidnapped. Vikramth approaches the principal and asks him about Madhav. The principal excuses himself for a bit and bolts out of there thinking that they have come onto him, indicating that the principal is actually Raghav, who's been killing the kids of his school. When Vikramth goes around his house, he finds the painting of the old abandoned temple of Kamaratu, so he decides to go check it out. When he reaches there, it looks like he's brought his daughter along with him, which suggests that she's just a figment of his imagination, as nobody in their right mind would take their child to such a creepy place. When he enters the temple, he finds all the serial killer's trophies from the kids. He also finds a red cape and mask and breaks down crying. This was the outfit his daughter was wearing the day she was murdered. We then watch a flashback where he falls in love with this beautiful woman and marries her. They have a baby girl and raise her with all the love and affection. One day when the daughter had to go attend a play, she got kidnapped and hanged. Witnessing all this, his beautiful wife goes into a coma. A heartbroken Vikramth decides to avenge his daughter's death, so he travels to Kamaratu. It is also revealed that Vikramth was one of the boys who was bullying his classmates, and that is why his daughter was killed. His daughter finally vanishes into thin air as he's about to finally avenge her. As he goes deeper into the temple, we see that there are 3 people in on the serial murders: Raghav, Madhav and their grandmother. We are then shown another flashback where we see that Madhav never really committed suicide. The brothers spot little Sanju with the gold, so they kill him and toss him into the well. Everybody in the village thought that the little Sanju was Madhav, and that's why there was no record of him. The plot is finally revealed as we see that the man pretending to be Sanju is actually Madhav. He acted as though he fell in love with Panna just to get close to her so he could finally kill her. Vikramth is now finally face to face with his daughter's killers. They get into an epic fight where Vikramth gets stabbed multiple times, but it doesn't affect him because he's now got skin made of steel. He finally manages to overpower both the evil brothers and finishes them off by hanging Raghav and kicking Madhav down a cliff. In this way, Vikramth manages to save his village and drives off into the sunset, always keeping his baby girl in his heart. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.